Welcome to the Flip Your Script podcast. I'm Christy Peel. Lucia Knell is a media leader who is arguably the godmother of using social media for good. As vice president at Upworthy, she has proven that social media can uplift, connect, and inspire millions through positive, human-centered storytelling. Lucia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Christy. Happy 2026.
Happy 2026. And one of the things that a lot of people are talking about as we think about the new year is, gosh, that darn social media. It's ruining my life. It's so toxic. People are getting fired. And you're one of the few people that's really passionate about this, like I am, that, oh, no. It's not the platform. It's how we're using it and what you're consuming. And you've been doing this a long time. Talk about, like, when you hear people mentioning the toxicity of social media, how does that impact you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat and thank you for all the work that you're doing. Yeah, I mean, I would like to validate a lot of those feelings. I feel those things a lot of the time as a user of social media. But on the work side of things and on the Upworthy side of things, we really think a lot of it is rooted in how you're interacting with the platform. So putting a bit of the onus on yourself, really, of yes, these algorithms are sort of latching on to what you're clicking on. And so if you're clicking on things that are negative and awful and rage baiting and fear baiting all the time, you're going to be served more of that content. And on the flip side, no pun intended with the podcast, if you are engaging with content that actually makes you feel hopeful about the future and hopeful about humanity and things that delight and inspire, you're going to start seeing more of that too. So the other thing I would say is social media really gets a bad rap for making you feel worse about the world. But it really does have the potential, and we're proving that out every single day, to make people feel more connected to one another, more connected to humanity, and there's more potential to really take that offline and engage with the world as a result in a much lighter way.
That's so well said. And I've thought about it a little bit. You know, if you had a whole group of really toxic friends and you were constantly complaining about your friends, oh, my friends, they make me feel blah, blah, blah. They're doing all these mean, terrible things and they're taking me to places I don't want to go. Everyone around you would say, like, get new friends. It's a little bit like social media. I mean, if you're surrounding yourself with toxic thoughts and the rage baity kind of content, you have agency to make some choices to change. And I don't know that everyone fully gets that or even believes that there's content like Upworthy out there, even though you have 5 million followers on Instagram and continue to grow. And you co-wrote this best-selling New York Times book called Good People: Stories from the Best of Humanity. It's out there. So my question for you is, do you think people don't want to see it, or are people drawn to the negative? How have we gotten here?
Yeah, we've done a lot of research on this since the book came out, about why people are attracted to different things or drawn to different things. There's this old adage from way back in newspaper days when they first came out called "If it bleeds, it leads." And so it's this idea that a headline that's rooted in fear or rooted in some sort of alarmist idea, it's really hard not to read it. It's just sort of human nature to sort of latch onto those things. Same with like local news or cable news. It's a lot of the time you're hearing these horrific stories, but you're not really hearing the good ones. You're not hearing these micro moments of kindness or a moment of delight with your neighborhood barista or whatever it is. And so our role that we've sort of put upon ourselves is to find those stories, have people submit those stories, scour the internet for those stories that has really created a counterbalancing and a counter narrative about humanity that proves otherwise. The engagement we get is cuckoo on our stuff. It's like we're getting hundreds of thousands of not just likes, but comments and shares, which we put more weight on because that means, it's making someone think of someone in their life that would love that video or love that post, or it reminded them of someone. And so I think we're actively disproving this idea that the world is awful and the world is rooted in divisiveness. To your point, I think these platforms and algorithms have become so freaky good at tapping into, what our brains want to latch onto. And that's really not our fault. But I do think taking a step back and realizing that opening the app is a choice. Like opening Instagram is a choice. I deleted Instagram at a certain point just for like a reset and a reboot. And I don't know if you've noticed this, Christy, but my thumb will start to go towards the app when it's not even on my phone. It's crazy. Our brains have become like hardwired to have this knee-jerk reaction to, oh, I'm bored for 1 second and now I want to open the app, or I feel like doom scrolling, or I'm not in a good way mentally, and this is what my brain wants to do, or this is what my, impulse is to do. So I call it conscious use of social media, just being able to take a beat, take a breath when you have this impulse to feed into that negativity and feed into that impulse to sort of reinforce this idea that the world is awful and the world is on fire. It's not to say that we should be looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. We should not be sticking our head in the sand, but it's at least creating space so that social media doesn't become the end all be all for where you're getting information. It's a fire hose of information. It's sort of like an assault on our senses. But if you are going to engage with it mindfully. Notice how your body feels. Is your heart starting to race when you open up the app? Do you start to compare yourself to, some friend from high school that's now engaged or pregnant or whatever it is? Or is it actually feeding your soul? Are you looking at something that's rooted in hobbies? Are you looking at something that makes you laugh and reminds you of a friend, and then you want to share that with a friend? I think there are just ways to, again, put the onus on yourself a little bit and not just be beholden to the powers that be at Meta and all the big platforms.
It's such an important point. And when people log onto social media and they are at their worst, they're tired, they might have a couple cocktails in them, they're lonely, they're sleep deprived, all these things, and then they get on these platforms. Gosh, it's risky to, as you said, mindfully and intentionally and strategically to get onto social media for the purpose of blank. If you can't say why you're getting on these platforms, that's one of the things that wrote a book about it. And we see leaders all over the country that are doing incredible things and having positive impacts on communities. But it's because it's strategic and it's intentional and it's authentic. And so much of the content that I think causes the negativity, it's a little bit like sitting down and watching a reality show. If you start like, I want to look like a Kardashian, why don't I? There's a lot of work happening. There's a lot of lights and cameras and things happening to make a Kardashian look like a Kardashian. So that's not a real, true, authentic measure. And yet that's the bar that some people, I think, are setting. And it's an impossible bar that creates division, whereas the stories that you're sharing bring connection. And the folks and the stories that you're sharing and that are, in the book, these are real people having real interactions that then can spread the positivity on social media. Because back in the day, if one of these stories would have happened, they could tell a friend and maybe it would go to a card club or 12 people would know, or maybe it would get in the newspaper. But now millions of people can find this positivity too. That was a long diatribe there. Lucia, my question for you is, do you ever wake up and think, my goodness, I'm part of something really big and important? Or can you like not mentally go there because it's just a little bit like, I don't know, I didn't sign up for this?
Kind of both. I think, if I'm being honest, I've been at Upworthy for 11 years. And so I've seen, the media landscape, and I know you too, between news and internet and social media just evolve and change over the years. Some of our peers in the news space and the social space have either dropped like flies or been acquired or, run out of money or whatever it is. The media business is not an easy one. It's very volatile. And I think it's really a testament to the mission of our company and the longevity of what we do, because people need this content. It's not just a nice to have, it's really a mental health tool at this point in today's day and age. Most people are getting their news on social media, like mainstream. There's this huge, massive lack of trust in legacy media companies, and magazines and newspapers are going out of print. And so it's really a matter of rising to the occasion of, okay, this is our reality. It's not a matter of whether people are getting their information from social, it's what they're seeing on social. And so, yeah, to your point, I do feel an immense amount of pride and excitement around the idea that we've been able to cut through this inundation of negativity, and the data speaks for itself. It's not us just like patting ourselves on the back. It's the audience and this community of millions of people validating these ideas that humanity can be good and good people are everywhere, which we'll talk about with the book in a second. And it's really fighting the good fight for this counter narrative to, again, the idea that the world is awful. So it's not that social media, it's not this black and white, like social media is inherently bad or inherently good. It's really just we are pushing the right things into the algorithm at the right times to make sure that, you know, people are reminded and engage with the content that a lot of people believe, which is in your day to day, when you get offline, for the most part, I mean, obviously, this is depending on life circumstances and where you're living and etc. But for the most part, like I have pretty pleasant interactions. You know, like I live in Los Angeles and I walk down my street in my neighborhood and I'm smiling at people on the street and they smile back or say good morning. You know, it's like very much rooted in these localized communities or neighborhoods. And the internet is just so vast and it's just such this overwhelming picture, generalized picture of like the world at large. But when you focus on your day to day offline, I think like reality sets in a little bit, which is for the most part, it's like overwhelmingly usually pretty pleasant. And I think we're just sort of revealing that again and reminding people on a daily basis that it's not these macro movements all the time. It can be as small as an interaction with someone where someone trips on the street and a stranger says, "Are you okay?" Or you're on the subway in New York City, shout out New York, I'm from New York, and someone's, you know, crying or having a hard time and someone says, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" Or, you know, someone cares helping a mom carry her stroller up the stairs. It's like these are just, it's human nature. You don't think about stuff like this. But I think we should be giving more weight to those micro moments and those micro interactions that don't get captured and don't make the news.
You bring up such a good point, that if our trust collectively is eroding in mainstream media and people are valuing authentic storytelling and real people,
Yeah.
the folks that you feature and that come through the Upworthy kind of channels and the content that you're putting out there, these are authentic people who have nothing to gain by sharing that great time someone helped them or fixed their car or whatever it might be. So it is this, well, there's this rise of there was just the YouTuber who declared fraud, and I'm in Minnesota, so Minnesota fraud, and because of what a YouTuber, not a trained journalist, put out there, the government is doing all sorts of interactions, right? It's a real person who's saying something, and now action is being taken. And I think on the other side of that, what you're doing is the same, right? These are not paid content creators. Now the YouTube guy was, so like I get it that it's different. These are people who are not trained journalists. They didn't take a lot of literature classes to create a perfect story. They're just sharing their experiences with other people. It's such a forward-looking platform. I mean, modern platform, I guess, not forward-looking, modern platform, but for a very old school traditional thing.
Yeah,
totally. We want
totally.
connections.
Yeah, I think, I talk to partners of ours because we'll work with foundations and nonprofits and Fortune 500 companies and advise them on, social media strategy. And this is a mass generalization, but like sometimes I'll say gone are the days of PSAs or very, very curated commercials or very manicured commercials, because they're not as relatable as someone taking a selfie video talking about an experience they had with a company treating them well or a boss treating them well, that then takes off and people are saying, this is a good boss, or my boss did this, or, they gave me a ton of time off when I was having mental health issues and didn't bat an eye, like something like that. And that's what travels, to your point. Like those are because they're real interactions. They're not celebrities talking to you from their penthouse in New York City. They're not anyone who can come across as condescending in any way. It's just a real person. And so it's refreshing in that way. And I also think everyone who has an Instagram, it's like that's their channel. They're an influencer in their own right, whether they like it or not. If they're posting from a restaurant they like in your town, there are chances that you're going to try that restaurant in your town, you know? So I think, yeah, it's refreshing, honestly. And again, that's a generalization, but I do think recognizing the reality that people have a lot more sway, normal people have a lot more sway, and regular folks have a lot more sway than I think they did 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Oh, for sure. And I think about it with the work that we do when, there's most companies have like their brand budget and they put a lot of marketing behind the brand. But if you would just unleash and give and empower the employees and the leaders to be posting on their own channels, all the studies and all the data and everything proves that there's going to be more interaction, more positive impact by allowing the real people to tell the real stories of what's happening in their day to day than the brand pumping out beautifully produced content that people look at it and they're like, of course the brand says they're good. But if so-and-so who works there says that, they had a positive interaction with their boss or the mental health, what all the examples you used, it matters. People vote with their dollars.
Exactly. And their attention and their engagement at this point. And I think, sometimes to your point, I think it was different 10 years ago when Instagram was just evolving. It was way before the Explore page, way before, stories were a thing. And remember when brands and even people would make their grids like very beautifully curated and it would make an image or it would be like this beautiful tapestry of whatever it is. Those days are gone. Like no one's going to your page to say like, oh, what a what a beautifully curated page. It's whatever's showing up in front of them. Our attention spans are like 3 seconds at this point, and it's sad, but it's true. I'm forgetting the stat now. I'll send it to you later. But 10 years ago, it was something like 12 seconds, and 20 years ago, it was something like 25 seconds. And the more it makes sense because if something doesn't grab your attention immediately, you just move on. That's how it works. To your point, I think something would hold a lot more weight if it's an organic video that is related to what your company does or related to how your employees feel. But it's, an employee out on the street taking a selfie video being like, I'm going to pay for the coffee for the person behind me today. And here's why. And then with their consent, of course, like getting a video of them saying like, this is so sweet, pay it forward. And then they do it for the person behind them. And so, even if that's for like, hey, at this company, we have a holiday tradition of paying for coffee for the person behind them. They're just ways of either expressing the mission of the company, but moreover, expressing the values of the company that I think would go a long way.
Right, because it shines a light on the behavior as opposed to the mission statement on the wall, which is just a static thing that doesn't have life or a soul. Before we talk about your book, you mentioned something that I have never thought of before, but I think is a story that highlights what you've talked about, if you don't mind if I share.
Sure, please.
I was in news and you mentioned it, and I think to the point to kind of distill all this down, like what you put in your mind every day is what changes your behavior. So when I was in news, I had a son, he was a toddler, and my husband was frustrated at one point that I would always have all of the toys cleaned up every single night, no matter what the circumstances were. And I said, but what if our house is burning down and we have to get out? And he was like, oh my gosh, listen to you. But I lived in the world where if it bleeds, it leads. So people's houses burn down regularly. Tornadoes kill people. Folks get murdered. I mean, if you are around that day after day after day, you believe that these stats that are minuscule are actually the normal. So fast forward years and years and years, my son is 17. He's diagnosed with cancer. I'm now doing all of this work. He's cancer-free, praise God, recently. Yep.
Thank God.
And because I do this work and understand the power of social media, I shared his story and a few parts of the journey for the purpose of helping others. And part of this is in the book because I rewrote the end of my book when all this was going on. But if I looked at social media as an opportunity to share for good. So through that endeavor, we've raised more than $50,000 for kids at hospital. There was a blood drive that had more than 50 blood donations.
Amazing.
We have all these things have happened. And it wasn't for the purpose of doing anything except authentically sharing a story and a real human experience to see, put it out into the world and see what comes back to you. And the amount of people that have been helped, and he's only been cancer free for a couple of months. So we're just at the beginning of what can happen. But had I gone through, I never knew about the positives power of social media and didn't see content like yours and didn't do the work I was doing, I don't think I would have told anyone about it.
Mm.
And the missed opportunity of helping other people through an experience would have been lost, because my mind would have still been focused on the negative and all of the worst case sort of scenarios, as opposed to looking up and thinking, my goodness, what if this could help someone else? And that shift, and bringing that shift to social media, is what you do every day. And it can change lives and communities and populations and generations. I mean, it's such a big deal, and it's so small and so easy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And well, first of all, thank God your son is okay.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
yeah. It also, I was going to say, from a mental health standpoint, it also must have been cathartic for you to share that, and healing for you to not keep that inside and be able to get that support from people. And also, it's very related to what we do, because there is a hunger from people to help. There's like a willingness and an excitement from people to help. And that is where social media can actually be a huge tool in bonding people together. And in your case, it's not just donations, but it's actually bringing people offline into real life to donate blood. Like you created, it was a spark that then created action in real life.
And to your point, like at the end of the day, people are good. People want to help. And if we can give them tangible ways to help, they will do it. But I think to your point, where there is this, lack of connection and we're in this digital world, it's easy to think, gosh, I don't know how to help anyone.
Yeah. And what's interesting is we have a series we do on Upworthy called Upworthy Spotlights, where, for example, at the end of last year, we posted something saying, please brag to me about a thing you did in 2025 that you're proud of. Okay. The comment section was thousands and thousands and thousands of responses of people sharing their own stories. And they were as straightforward as, I became a school librarian, to which people said, librarians are so valuable. They're so lucky to have you. To, I made it, I wrote these down. I made it through my husband's personality shifts due to Alzheimer's.
Wow.
Like big one, deep. And then other people responded saying, sending you so much love. And another person responded saying, my mom is going through Alzheimer's as well, sending you positive vibes. And so these are like profound connections or profound responses that actually help someone and actually create community. And then we'll get these DMs from people saying, thank God Upworthy exists, because you're actually changing not only my mental health, but it's actually changing the way I perceive people and the way I perceive the world. And so creating community in the comment section, it's like we call our comment section the kindest comment section on the internet, because when you come there, people aren't coming to judge you. People aren't coming to shoot you down in ways you'll see, ugly sides of people come out on some other pages. But people, it's such a refreshing reprieve from the negativity we see online. And again, it points to the potential that social media has to actually create community.
And there are so many experiences, and some of them, came into the book, where if people don't share, you can just feel so alone, like Alzheimer's, right? That's something where if you're a caregiver, gosh, you can feel so alone and think, my goodness, I must be the only one. Like, turns out you're not. And these people are out there.
So I think the reason people are drawn to Upworthy content is because we provide content that taps into universal themes that make people forget about identity politics. So in today's day and age, there's such a sense of divisiveness and such a sense of this stubborn grabbing onto, labels and ideas of like, you're either this or you're that. And at the end of the day, we kind of want the same things, right? It's like, regardless of politics, we want safe neighborhoods for our kids. We want a roof over our heads, food on the table, neighborhoods, and respect for, pleasant interactions or respect for those around us. And it has nothing to do with identity politics. And so I think what, For example, topics that do really well for us are seniors, kids, humor, the arts, music, dance, theater, etc. Something moving or nostalgic or a beautiful thing that happened with a friend. And again, I think it's just such a reminder that at the end of the day, we have a lot more in common than we don't. And again, we get millions and millions of interactions that really prove out that's what people want. So it's encouraging.
It's important because when people are commenting on your channels, they're not saying, my name is Mike, I'm this age, I'm this color, I voted for this president, I identify sexually in this way. I mean, it's that doesn't matter. The human experience is the human experience, and people can laugh at the same joke, whether or not they voted the same way or go to the same church or don't go to any church. The goodness is within.
There's these two examples. One is a video we posted of some guy cheersing people on the street, like with his coffee cup, just walking down the street of New York City and just cheersing people and see how many people do it. And people just light up. You know, some people obviously walk by, but people light up because it's just this delightful thing. It's a friendly thing that has nothing to do with anything beyond just pure basic delight. And there's another one we posted of a dad learning his daughter's cheerleading dance, and he's doing it
that was
it
a
from
good
the
one.
stands.
That's a good one.
And it's just like, again, it has nothing to do with who you voted for. It's just this human instinct to say, this is amazing, this is delightful, I love it, go off dad, tapping into your feminine, and we love masculinity, and we love that. And I'll send it to my friend because it made me smile, and period, that's it. There's a lot to be said about that. And then the last thing I'll say is, as far as like this human inclination to be kind, a good example I like to use is if you see someone trip on the street, you'll see a ton of people run over to them, or at least, two people run over to them. And before you pick them up off the street, you're not going to ask them, who did you vote for? It doesn't occur to you. It just is this human inclination to help. And I think we're hardwired to want to be good in the world.
Excellent point. So yeah, talk about the book, because it's a profound, it's 101 stories, right?
Yes. So we came out with a book called Up Were These Good People, Stories from the Best of Humanity. It is a book of 101 short stories. It is 6 chapters. And the best part is every single story came from our comment section on Instagram, which is just like the coolest thing ever. And it came about because my co-author and I would ask these questions to our audience. For example, what's the kindest thing a stranger ever did for you? Thousands of comments. People there's this hunger to share and prove this idea that people are fundamentally good, inherently good at heart. Another question, who's the teacher that changed your life? Or tell us about a story when you were traveling abroad, when someone helped you without even speaking the same language. And so my co-author Gabe and I, went through every single comment and selected a handful of stories that we saw were seeds to larger stories that could sort of like blow up into short stories. And we DM people saying, hey, we love this and we'd love to interview you if you're open to it, and so we can learn more about it. We worked hand in hand with hundreds of members of our audience to learn their stories and turn them into short stories. They're very bite-sized, very digestible. I'm sure you saw. It's wonderful to sort of, you can literally open the book to a random page and read a story in the morning or before you go to bed that will literally lighten you and make you feel warm in a way that A, does not require a screen, and B, is, can be used as a mental health tool to reassure you that there are wonderful people out there. These stories make you laugh, they make you cry. It's because we hit the New York Times bestseller list, which I think is a really huge testament. Thank you. Huge testament to, again, the demand for this. Literally every other book listed on the bestseller list was negative. It was about politics. It was about divisiveness. It was about, social media or tech that was having a negative impact. And the fact that we hit number 7 out of 10 and then stayed on the list for 2 weeks is huge. It speaks for itself. So I'm very proud of it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Should be proud. And the wonderful thing is that think of all the books that can still happen because these amazing stories are
Yeah.
unfolding day after day after day. There's no, we're not going to run out of people
No.
doing great things, which is just such a, I feel lighter just talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And if you've had a negative interaction with people, whether online or in person, because they happen, or you had a fight with a family member or a
Sure.
friend, read one of these stories and you'll
Sure.
immediately be like, look, I had one interaction. There's a whole book of good stories. And if I open my eyes and look for the good in people, I can
Right.
find it. And to look for the good in people requires you also to be good to someone else. It's just the most amazing and simple and beautiful yet complex flywheel
Yeah.
out there.
That's so true. It's like these stories, they don't stop coming, you know? It's like we ask this question every single day, we'd continue to get stories over and over again. And so it's almost like we gave people permission to open up. We gave people permission to find those stories or think about those memories of someone you hadn't thought about in years and years, or the stranger who you hadn't thought about in years and years, but had a real impact on you, to the point where there's a reason people remember these stories from decades ago, like 20 years ago, when someone helped them or someone complimented them and it actually changed their whole day. I actually have a good example of this. We have a story called Good Hair Day in the book, where it's this woman who had actually been going through radiation treatment for cancer, and she had just come out of it. She was like just in remission, and she and her son were out and about in the world, and she was, growing her hair back in a little pixie cut. And these younger women looked at her and they were like, cute haircut. I love your haircut. It's very seemingly innocuous, like don't even think twice about it, just giving a compliment. And it impacted this woman so profoundly, of coming out of this moment of trauma and stress and fear. And in that exact moment, these girls didn't even know it, but they had this tremendous impact on her sense of self, her sense of identity, regaining her sense of identity as a woman and a person in the world. And it just goes to show you just never know. And so the idea behind these stories is also to have a ripple effect on people, to go out and feel more inclined to, if you think of a compliment or you think of, I love that person's shirt, tell them. You have no idea the kind of impact it could have on someone. So I love this idea that we also have a actionable takeaway for folks without even having to tell them. It just really inspires people to be that person themselves.
What a great story. And an in-person interaction that could have ended there, but then ended up on social media, ended up in the
Mm-hmm.
book, ended up impacting all sorts of people because social media allows us to take a positive message and spread it and see those ripple effects happening. And also the questions that you ask determine the answers you get. So if you sit
Mm-hmm.
down with your friends at a dinner party or whatever and say, hey, tell me about the best teacher you ever had, you're going to have an entirely different evening than if you start with, tell me about the worst Gen Z person you've ever met.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
could spend the
totally.
night talking about both, but you're going to leave that conversation feeling different.
Totally. I mean, we actually have a chapter called The Kids Are All Right, and it's literally about something a kid said to you that made you feel hopeful for the future.
I
And I
love that.
think, I know, it's also, they're really funny ones. There's one that says, I mean, there are a lot of, yeah, there are a lot of funny ones, but it was this kid talking to his mom, and he was like, Mom, he's a 5-year-old, and he's like, Mom, I really love this song or something, and it makes me feel like I'm 4 again.
Oh, kids say the darndest things.
Literally. Or like, Mommy, there's another one. This kid goes, Mommy, I really love Daddy. Where did we get him? And so it's even these like innocent moments that again trigger nostalgia, they trigger memories, they trigger this belief that kids are born inherently good and benevolent. Another one, I'm just remembering all these. Another one where a kid goes up to his mom and he says, Mommy, you smell like love.
Oh,
I know. And so it's these micro moments again, like that doesn't make the news. Like you're not reading stories about that, but it's worth hearing. Because then again, we share these things and then we get tons of comments saying, oh my God, my kid said this thing to me. My kid said this thing to me. And then people come to Upworthy just to read the comment section. It's like they'll be there just to get this jolt of positivity or this jolt of reassurance. And it really does impact your mental health.
Oh, I love it. Well, I could talk with you all day. I applaud what you're doing.
Thank you.
And you and I also both agree on something that I want to make sure that we mention, which is not everything needs to go on social media. There are times where put down your phone, soak it up with your soul, enjoy the people around you. If you want to post about it later, feel free. And if you need to take a break, that's totally fine. But know that it's a powerful tool that can be used for good. And I would argue should be used for good. So
yeah, I'm so glad you said that. I think, you know, as far as boundaries goes, because again, as someone who's worked on social for a long time, it is critical to take breaks. It is critical to create boundaries that work for you. It's not a black or white, all or nothing thing. But for example, when I go to bed, I have a rule for myself of no social media as soon as I'm in bed. So I will not look at social media at night. I won't look at social media when I first wake up, because it really sets the tone for the entire day. If the first thing you're seeing is an awful headline about the world or politics or what have you, what a horrible way to start your day or set the tone for the day. So that works for me. But yeah, just thinking about ways you can mindfully engage with it, I think makes a big difference.
well, thank you for the work that you're doing at Upworthy and personally to encourage people to flip their script when they think about their relationship with social media and the content they consume. So thank you for being a guest on the podcast, and we're cheering you on and can't wait to see the stories you're amplifying.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Christy.